Reports from North Korea indicate that authorities have begun confiscating expensive coats lined with dog fur from civilians. These coats are being redistributed to soldiers facing supply shortages and are in need of winter clothing. A resident of South Pyongan province revealed that security personnel have recently been stopping men wearing dog fur coats on the streets and confiscating them on the spot. This is the first time they've done something like this, the resident said. They claim it's because civilians are not allowed to wear military-style clothing. The resident further explained that aside from providing warmth, these coats resemble military uniforms and symbolize power, which is one reason they are popular among civilians. However, very few North Koreans can afford these specially made coats. Only the wealthy can buy them. The resident said that these high-quality coats, lined with dog fur, cost 1 million North Korean won, $50 US, which is higher than the annual salary for many government-assigned positions. They are the best winter clothing because the entire lining is made of dog fur, he said. They are expensive and can only be purchased from specialized manufacturers. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, which had been a key aid provider, North Korea's economy has suffered severe setbacks. Its military, reportedly numbering in the millions, has also struggled with equipment shortages. In principle, North Korean soldiers should receive a summer uniform every year and a winter uniform every 2 years, but distribution has been inconsistent. Last year, the military began requiring discharged soldiers to return their uniforms so they could be reassigned to those still serving. The resident noted that due to the military shortage of clothing, soldiers are left shivering in the cold wind, while wealthy civilians walk around in warm dog fur coats, creating a stark contrast. Another local resident, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said dog fur coats have become rare in North Pyongan province. He said, "Some civilians used to wear them to show off, but authorities have started seizing them." The resident added, "This type of coat isn't meant for regular soldiers. It's for officers stationed at outposts near the South Korean border." He mentioned that authorities have questioned civilians, asking how they could wear such luxury while soldiers stand at front lines in tattered second-hand uniforms. He said that soldiers must endure winter training, which requires lying on frozen ground, making these coats essential for them. He also noted that some people oppose the confiscation of these coats, but remain silent to avoid punishment for speaking out. Analysts point out that border outposts near South Korea serve as a key part of Kim Jong-un's external image. Why are soldiers there left without proper winter coats, shivering in the cold? Some speculate that these coats may have been urgently sent to the front lines in Ukraine. Earlier drone footage appears to show North Korean soldiers wearing thin uniforms while advancing through snowy battlefields in the Russia-Ukraine war. This was an embarrassment for Kim Jong-un, as these troops were exposed to global media coverage. There are concerns that such reports could weaken morale within North Korea's military. In January, reports surfaced that a short video obtained by Japan's NHK suggested North Korean troops deployed to Russia might be wearing Russian military uniforms. According to NHK, the short video was obtained from a source familiar with the matter. It reportedly shows the gear worn by a deceased North Korean soldier, including a Russian military uniform, boots, and helmet. The soldier's ID tag was inscribed with a Russian word for Russian army and included a serial number used for personal identification. Observers generally believe that the reason North Korean soldiers in Russia are wearing Russian military uniforms is to conceal Moscow's military cooperation with Pyongyang. However, an analyst pointed out that with over 10,000 North Korean troops reportedly deployed to Russia, some are bound to be captured or killed. Using Russian uniforms to hide their identity seems neither effective nor logical. If captured, a North Korean soldier wearing a Russian uniform would only further expose the situation. A more plausible explanation is that North Korean troops enter the battlefield without any military gear of their own, including uniforms. Russia may have provided them with equipment while they initially wore their North Korean uniforms upon deployment. It is possible that both Russia and North Korea military leaders knew from the start that these soldiers had little chance of survival once they reached the front lines. Whether they wore standard uniforms or winter coats may not have been a priority. However, when footage of captured North Korean soldiers dressed in thin clothing surfaced in Western media, it became an embarrassment for Kim Jong-un. This may have prompted the decision for North Korean troops to wear Russian uniforms instead. Back in North Korea, soldiers are not only struggling to obtain winter coats, there are growing reports that food shortages have become a serious problem. According to a source within the military, a desertion incident occurred on the night of February 19th at an outpost of the 31st Brigade under the Border Guard Command. When regular communications between the outpost and its unit were interrupted, an emergency search was launched. 2 days later, a soldier was found exhausted in a village several kilometers away and was taken into custody by the brigade's security department for investigation. During questioning, the deserter reportedly stated that food supplies had been cut back, forcing soldiers to endure hunger on duty since early February. Frequent outpost rotations had also made it difficult to engage in smuggling, which many relied on to save money for their post-service transition. Frustrated by the situation, he decided to flee. The source explained that for soldiers in the 31st Brigade, surviving on military rations alone is nearly impossible. If their families cannot provide support, they must resort to smuggling to get by. However, with stricter internal controls in place, some soldiers have openly declared that they would rather risk desertion than starve. At this rate, we'll all die of hunger, one reportedly said. Escaping is better than starving to death here. In December, 2 soldiers from the 31st Brigade also attempted an armed desertion. One was captured and later put on public trial. Some within the brigade believe that to address desertion at its core, the dire conditions faced by soldiers must be improved. Even some officers acknowledge that punishment and tighter controls alone will not solve the problem. Supply shortages must be resolved. However, the brigade security department insists that harsh punishment is the most effective deterrent. They argue that soldiers will ultimately fear the consequences, and the stricter the penalties, the less likely they are to flee. The source says that deserting soldiers are typically sentenced to forced labor under military court rulings, but this time, the brigade security department is reportedly seeking a much harsher sentence to set an example and prevent further desertions. On February 26, a source in North Hamgyong Province reported that soldiers from the 27th Brigade's Border Guard unit stationed in Horong City have been begging for food from local residents due to a lack of side dishes. The military typically provides only corn rice, but the portions are small. As a result, soldiers go to civilian homes to ask for additional food, often receiving pickled radish or kimchi. The source explained that soldiers take turns working in pairs at the mess hall, where their main responsibility is to secure side dishes. If the food is not satisfactory, they risk being scolded by their superiors, making the task of gathering food a heavy burden. The brigade has reportedly run out of its stockpile of kimchi and pickled radish. With no other side dishes available, soldiers assigned to the mess hall have taken to begging from local households. On February 18, a soldier from the 27th Brigade was asking for food from civilians, explaining, "I'm on duty at the mess hall tomorrow. Could you spare some side dishes?" Thanks to good relations with the locals, the soldier was able to obtain meat substitutes, potatoes, tofu, pickled cabbage, and pickled radish. Despite their own hardships, residents did not refuse a soldier's request. Some may have given food because seeing the soldiers reminded them of their own children. Reports indicate that soldiers from the 25th Brigade, stationed in Haesan, Ryanggang Province, have also been begging for food from local households, leading to growing frustration among residents. A source in Ryanggang Province said that people living near military bases are under significant stress due to soldiers knocking on their doors daily. If residents refuse to give food, the soldiers linger and refuse to leave. If they give even once, the soldiers return frequently, prompting many locals to stop opening the doors altogether. The issue of food shortages in border guard units predates the COVID-19 pandemic. Before the outbreak, smuggling provided a means for locals to earn money, and soldiers who took bribes to facilitate these activities could secure extra food. However, with smuggling now largely impossible, soldiers have lost their source of income and are struggling to obtain basic side dishes. The source added that many people express frustration at the sight of soldiers, who are supposed to defend the country, having to beg for food. Some have even mocked the situation, saying that recruits should simply bring their own food when they enlist. North Korea's economy has been in the dire straits in recent years, which is one of the main reasons Kim Jong-un ordered troops to be sent directly into combat. In exchange, Pyongyang is receiving money and supplies from Russia. According to a report by Radio Free Asia, visitors to North Korea during holidays may notice female teachers carrying buckets of water in and out of apartment buildings. They also have to make multiple trips. In North Korea, teaching is a respected profession, and many residents have been surprised to see these women hauling water, even on Lunar New Year's Day. This is because government salaries are now extremely low. Teachers, like most North Koreans, must take on side jobs to survive. Some earn extra income by carrying water for wealthy households. Although most North Korean apartment buildings have plumbing, many taps do not function due to broken pumps, damaged pipes, or service interruptions. To address the issue, some apartment residents have installed 200-liter water tanks in their homes. However, these tanks must be refilled every few days. Filling a water tank can take an entire day and require significant effort. Because of this, residents who can afford to pay others for the task prefer to use that time for other activities outside their homes. When hiring someone to refill their tanks, residents are not always home, so they need to find someone they trust enough to hand over their house keys. Teachers, being respected figures in society, are often chosen for this job. A resident of North Hamgyong province told the radio station people trust teachers not to mess with their belongings. The payment for refilling a water tank depends on the apartment floor. The higher the floor, the higher the price. A resident of South Pyongan province explained, they fetch water from pumps installed in apartment basements and fill 10-liter buckets. Each bucket costs 300 North Korean won, which is 1.5 cents. On the fourth floor and above, the price doubles to 600 won, which is 3 cents. This is one reason wealthy people prefer to live on lower floors. When electricity and water supply are stable, higher floors are more desirable because they offer better views and fewer pests. However, since elevators in North Korea often do not work, residents must carry water up the stairs themselves, making lower floors more convenient. This resident shares, for each apartment kitchen water tank, you have to carry 2 buckets at a time to go up and down the stairs 10 times. If you fill water tanks for 2 households on the 3rd floor or below, you can earn about 12,000 North Korean won. That is about 60 cents. Given the current cost of living in North Korea, this amount is enough to buy 1.5 kilograms of rice. The resident described it as a relatively stable job. She said, "In my apartment building, 3 female teachers from elementary and middle schools rely on this work to afford meals. Every 2 days, they fetch water for 3 households." However, she added, people feel sorry for the country's teachers. They are supposed to be respected professionals of the revolution, yet they have to haul water just to survive. Despite their hardships, North Korean teachers are not the ones suffering the most. Many women in North Korea are facing even more dire situations. A video recorded by South Korean media provided a rare glimpse into North Korea's underground sex trade. The industry remains highly secretive, but many North Korean girls, driven by poverty, have been forced into prostitution to survive. This issue is particularly severe in border regions where their services are sold cheaply. In the past, there were even reports that Chinese farmers traded rice in exchange for North Korean wives. During winter, when border rivers freeze, many North Korean women secretly cross into China to engage in sex work. Some are trafficked and forced into marriage with poor Chinese men. While they may feel relief at having food to eat, they must live in hiding, constantly fearing arrest and deportation back to North Korea, a fate that could mean imprisonment or worse. On the evening of December 5, 2024, Yeonmi Park, a North Korean defector, shared her personal story at the University of California, Berkeley, detailing her escape from North Korea and her experiences under China's rule. She described her time in China as filled with darkness and suffering, at times making her question whether life was worth living. She recalled that when she and her mother first arrived in China in 2007, her mother was sold to traffickers for $65, while she herself was sold for over $200. At the time, she was just 13 years old and half her current size. Park explained that life for North Korean defectors in China was extremely difficult. The Chinese government intensified its crackdown on escapees, and those caught were forcibly repatriated to North Korea, an outcome that often meant execution. She outlined 4 common fates for defectors who remained in China. She said that they were worth less than an iPhone, and that in China, a person could be bought for just a few $100s. The second was being sold into forced prostitution, suffering relentless abuse and exploitation. The third was fake marriages. She noted that many poor Chinese farmers, some with mental or psychological issues, purchased North Korean women as wives. The final fate was being forced into chat rooms, where they were made to engage in online sex scams. With the help of South Korean missionaries in China, Park and her mother eventually managed to escape and reach New York. She claimed that around 300,000 North Korean women are currently trapped in China as sex slaves. She has spoken with influential figures in the United States, urging them to raise awareness about China's role in human trafficking. However, she described the response as disheartening. She was told, "We have business interests in China. Please don't tell anyone we met, and don't mention my name." Park said this experience made her realize that many American institutions, including Ivy League universities, large corporations, and even Washington-based organizations, have been infiltrated by the Chinese Communist Party and have abandoned their commitment to American values. She highlighted what she saw as the irony of China's role in the United Nations, stating that while it helps shape global human rights policies, it is also a key supporter of North Korea's dictatorship and one of the largest indirect funders of global concentration camps. She called this a contradiction, a joke, and a major hypocrisy, questioning the UN's true stance and effectiveness in upholding human rights. Park emphasized that the survival of the North Korean regime is entirely dependent on China, particularly in terms of energy supplies. While the international community frequently discusses sanctions on North Korea, she argued that the real solution is straightforward. If China stopped providing oil, Kim Jong-Un would be unable to conduct nuclear tests. In her view, China is the root cause of the North Korea problem. However, despite his dependence on Beijing, Kim Jong-un does not seem to hold much gratitude towards China. On the contrary, he harbors deep resentment and distrust towards the CCP. Whenever he gets the chance, he refers to China as North Korea's sworn enemy. At least in his eyes, China is far more dangerous than Russia, perhaps because he understands the CCP all too well.